Okay, okay. Good morning, everyone. You well? Yeah, so well? Okay, good. That's always a good start on the day. Waking up in the morning, nice and refreshed. So we're going to carry on with these contemplations. These are called the anusatis in Pali language. Anusati means to recall or to remember. These are six kind of remembrances or recollections. And the first one that we looked at yesterday is the recollection of the Buddha, and now we're going to move on to the recollection of the Dhamma. And the Dhamma, as you would know, is the teaching of the Buddha. The word Dhamma is a kind of very interesting word in Indian philosophy or Indian culture. And the root meaning is something like nature, the way nature is. And so nature here means like the way of the world. In other words, things like the laws of the world, how the world operates. And so Dhamma is the teaching about how the world functions, how the world works. And the laws in Buddhism are not, they're not about things that actually exist in themselves. When we talk about laws, we're talking about conditionality. We're talking about how one thing leads to something else. This is always the lawfulness in Buddhism. Nothing is essential. Nothing is everlasting, except maybe the laws. Yeah, the laws might be everlasting because they are not really, the phenomena in the world are not everlasting, but the laws may be everlasting. In fact, the Buddha says that these things are inherent, and they are not inherent, they are regular. They're always like this, like things like impermanence or dependent origination. Maybe dependent origination, yeah. Some people might disagree with that, I'm not sure. We can find out. And so this is the Dhamma. The Dhamma is the teaching about this. So Dhamma also means truth, because the laws of the world are the truth of the world. And so sometimes it is also reference to Nibbana, because Nibbana is kind of the highest truth, the undiluting truth. And all of these things are included in that. So this is then the idea of the Dhamma in kind of generally speaking. But we want to talk a bit more about it in terms of the teaching of the Buddha specifically. So one of the interesting things about these anusatis is that they kind of follow from the previous one. The previous one comes and then the next one follows naturally from that one. So once you have an awakened person like a Buddha in the world, then the Dhamma follows naturally from that. The Buddha has the insight, and then he sits under the Bodhi tree, or he goes on retreat or whatever, and then he reflects on that insight. What does this mean? How do I express this in words? This is one of those really extraordinary things in Buddhism, that you are able to have this insight, the most profound insight that is possible to have as a human being, and then somehow express it in words. It is really, really difficult. I sometimes talk to Ajahn Brahma, and he says to me, I can't believe that Buddha was able to express these things, because these things are so profound. It's just impossible. Even a thing like a deep samadhi. If you ask the majority of people in the world who may be practicing samadhi in different kind of religions, maybe in Hinduism or maybe even in Christianity sometimes, they get deep meditations, and they call it ineffable. And the English word ineffable means cannot be expressed in words. That's really what it means. But the Buddha could express it in words. The Buddha gave these beautiful descriptions of all the most profound aspects of human experience. He gave descriptions of these things. He described the jhanas, he described the stages of awakening, and he kind of, based on our ordinary experiences, he was able to articulate this. And this is kind of the astonishing thing about the Buddha, his ability to articulate, what we now call the four Nikayas or the Agamas. This is basically the articulation of that one insight, one flash of insight. The awakening ended up with kind of a collection of 10,000 pages. Those 10,000 pages come from that one flash of insight. It's kind of really amazing when you think about it. And so this is one of the things that makes the Buddha so special. You can see why most people who reach awakening, they cannot give up. This cannot be articulated. I'm just going to go off to a cave and meditate for myself. Yeah, impossible to say these things. They become Pacceka Buddhas. They don't articulate these things, and they just go off and they enjoy the liberation of the mind that came through that insight. But the Buddha has both that ability to be a spiritual master, but also the ability to articulate these things as well. So it's like a double kind of intelligence that maybe the Pacceka Buddha, the Pacceka Buddha is like the private Buddha. They are the ones who don't teach, don't have that same ability, it may seem. Yeah, so this is kind of the Buddha. This is so now when the Dhamma is like, again, this kind of one picture. And in this one picture, every little piece, yeah, it's like a jigsaw picture, one picture, but that big picture has little pieces. And these little pieces are the different kind of teachings. And it all fits together in this beautiful way. That is kind of the Dhamma. That's what the Buddha has given us. These 4 Nikayas, the 4 Agamas, etc. So this is kind of what we have inherited from the Buddha. The Buddha says, here, take this, read this, understand, and reach the same kind of awakening as I did. That's what the Dhamma is all about. So Buddha, then comes the Dhamma from the Buddha. From the Dhamma comes the Sangha. Yeah, once you start practicing these things, people have the same realization. You get the Arya Sangha, the noble Sangha arising from that. The noble Sangha are those people who have the same insight as the Buddha had. One thing leading to the next one. Once you have a Sangha, well, then you know the path is working. So then you have a training. The Sikha kind of comes out of the first 3. These are the things the Buddha says in the sutras that he shows them in this kind of sequence. Yeah, and he says that these are the things we should respect. So when you respect the Buddha, then you also respect the Dhamma, because the Dhamma arises from the Buddha. When you respect the Buddha and the Dhamma, you respect the Sangha. Garava is the part of the word. Garava means to respect. It's from the word garu, same word as guru in India. Yeah, it means a teacher, someone to be respected. Garava. And so from the first 2 comes the Sangha. When you have those 3, you also respect the training. When you respect the training, you respect Samadhi. Yeah? Samadhi is right there among all of these things, because the training kind of culminates in Samadhi. The Noble Eightfold Path ends with Samadhi. That is like the highest expression of the training on the path. Together with right view, that is what then gives rise to awakening. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a sidetrack. But these things always come together like this in the sutras. So let us have a look at this Dhamma that the Buddha gives rise to. So one of the kind of remarkable things about this Dhamma is that it comes from someone who discovers the meaning of life. And if this Dhamma is the expression, the articulation of that meaning of life, it becomes the most important writing, the most important scriptures in the world. There's nothing like this. The Dhamma is the highest kind of literature that is possible. And not so long ago, I went to Sydney to visit my friend Bhante Sujato, and he had kind of put up this really nice, he has translated all the sutras, I had translated the Vinaya, and so we were going to have a book launch, This is what kind of monks get into these days, get into book launches. So we're going to have this book launch, and we had this in a really magnificent place, this old library in Sydney, this kind of colonial-style building, because Australia was also one of the colonies, so colonial-style buildings, very kind of beautiful old-style building with very tall ceilings, kind of magnificent, And I thought, this is suitable for presenting the most important literature in the world, right? And so then we had people coming in, and one of the people who came was the Premier of Western Australia. It's like the Prime Minister of Western Australia. He was there, or the ex-one, I should say, not the current one. And so we had kind of some important people there, and so we had kind of all these things coming together. And then we presented the scriptures. And when we presented the scriptures, I said, this literature is the most important literature in the history of Australia. That's what I said. And people were, what? What are you talking about? And actually, I was wrong. It is not really true. It is not about Australia. It's the most important literature in the history of the world. That is the truth, yeah. So I was underestimating the importance of these things. There is nothing else like it. Sometimes we think of kind of the great literature of the world, the great classics. And I don't know what you consider the great classics here in Hong Kong and China. Maybe you consider it the Confucian dialects or whatever. I don't know. Is that what it's called? Dialect? Yeah, something like that. And or maybe in England, they might call it Shakespeare. Might be considered the kind of the most greatest literature in England. But all of these things, they are kind of very even. I don't know much about Confucius, but I understand it's more like worldly. It's more about how to operate in society. But this is beyond. This transcends. This is above everything else. Yeah. And this is what makes it so beautiful. You can actually escape. It is not trying to make the best out of a messed up world. Okay, you can make the best of it, and of course there are some good principles for how to live well. But actually, it is kind of giving up on that whole thing because you realize at the end of the day, it is never really, there is no solution in the world. The only solution is beyond. So this is the most important literature in the history of the world. That's kind of extraordinary when you think about that. The majority of people in the world are not really aware of that. They don't understand that there is something available coming from the greatest spiritual genius in human history who has discovered this thing called the meaning of life, which everyone is trying to find, but no one is really able to understand. Philosophers and religious teachers have tried to discover this for centuries and millennia, probably for eons of universes, and never really, actually, every time there's a Buddha, it comes back again. Then it disappears, because people don't really understand eventually. So this is what you have. So when I was saying yesterday, when you hold these books, when you hold the Dhamma in your hands, you're actually holding something extraordinarily precious. And it's like I was saying yesterday, you feel like you tremble a little bit when you hold these books in your hands because you understand how important it is. This is what this is all about. And so let us now have a look at how the Buddha talks about this Dhamma, how he expresses these things. I'm going to discuss this not in super great detail, but at least a little bit, and we'll see what comes out of this. So this is how the Buddha teaches this. So furthermore, a noble disciple recollects the teaching, the Dhamma. The teaching is well explained by the Buddha, apparent in the present life, immediately effective, inviting inspection, relevant. I don't know about relevant, but anyway, this is not. It's not my translation, so I take. So that sensible people can know it for themselves. And then we have the same thing we had before. When a noble disciple recollects the teaching, the Dhamma, the mind is not full of greed, hate, and delusion, and going all the way down to samadhi. And this is called the noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced, lives untroubled among people who are troubled. They've entered the stream of the teaching and developed the recollection of the teaching. I like this translation, be untroubled among people who are troubled. The world is troubled. This is kind of the reality of the world. And if you can be untroubled in that world of trouble, wow, you really means you have your life together. This is what this promises. It's kind of marvelous. So the teaching is well explained by the Buddha, Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Suakato. Su is good, akato is like explained or expounded. So it's well explained by the Buddha. The Buddha takes effort, makes a lot of effort into articulating these things in the right way. He reflects on these things. It is not put together haphazardly. It's kind of interesting. I have always been surprised at how interested people are in ordinary Buddhist books. And they will read this teacher and that teacher, and they will say, much more easy to read these teachers than to read the word of the Buddha. It's so, because these are so beautiful, it's so nice, it's flowery and poetic, and all of these kind of things. And the Buddha warned against this. He warned in the suttas that he says in the future people will be preferring to read the word of the disciples, which is flowery, poetic, and beautiful. Yeah, they will read that, but they won't read the word of the Buddha, which is profound, deep, connected with emptiness, it says. Sunyata patisanyuta means connected with emptiness. They won't read that, but they will read all these flowery, beautiful things. That is pretty much where we have been for a long time already. Yeah, these flowery things that people prefer to read because it's easy. It kind of, we like beautiful things in our life. But then we forget about the thing which is really profound and really interesting. And what I find about the suttas is that if you want to really read the Dhamma and you want to understand how it works, there is nothing better than the suttas. There's nothing that is more precise. There's nothing that is more direct. This is where you learn the Dhamma properly. And all of these modern authors, okay, they're kind of nice. You can read that a little bit, but that should not be the mainstay. If that is the mainstay, you lose out on the really good, the really great, profound teachings. And so the Buddha's words are well proclaimed. So you read them with care. You understand the Buddha put a lot of effort into this. They are consistent. They have integrity overall. They work really well. Sometimes you read some of these modern teachers and you wonder, it may sound nice, but sometimes when you think about it, what are they actually saying? I don't really understand what they're saying. They use kind of words a bit randomly here and there. They contradict themselves and all these kind of things, And they may very well be, I don't know, they may probably very well practiced, but still they are more random. They don't have that sense of clarity or directness or coherence that you find in the suttas. So that's why when you read it very carefully. You think about every word. Sometimes you know the Pali behind these things, the Pali word. Sometimes you discuss the English words and you don't really know, different translators use different words, so you don't really know what they talk about. So this is kind of the idea here. Elsewhere the Buddha says that when he gives his teachings, he says there is nothing missing and nothing superfluous. It is complete. You don't need anything else. You don't need the Abhidhamma. Yay! You don't need the Abhidhamma. Because it's very boring, right? So it's good if you don't need the boring stuff. It's really good news. Don't need Abhidhamma. Hooray! I remember a few years ago I was in KL, in Kuala Lumpur, and we go to the Buddhist Gem Fellowship over there. Very nice people, very nice group, very dedicated Buddhists. And I was giving these beautiful teachings about the early Buddhist texts. We were doing kind of early Buddhism and suttas and these kind of things. And so I was quite a few people coming to these classes. And then one afternoon I said, today we have to cancel your teaching, Venerable, because today we have Abhidhamma class. I thought, what? What are you preferring Abhidhamma to these beautiful teachings of the Buddha? And then I went back to my room, and I kind of just sitting in my room, having a rest or whatever. And then the Abhidhamma people came, and they were so loud. They were so noisy. I thought, is this what Abhidhamma is about? The loud Dhamma? Is that what it means? And so really noisy. And then I went out to have a look, and there was more people coming to the Abhidhamma than coming to my class. And I thought, okay, now this is no more messing around. Now we have to really get into the early sutta. How can more people come to the Abhidhamma? It's kind of, and I was joking a little bit to people that more people coming to the Abhidhamma than to my class. But there's some truth to that. Sometimes we forget what is really important. We don't go to those things that really are profound and beautiful. And then we go to the Abhidhamma class. Why do we go there? Because some people say, this is the real expression of the teaching of the Buddha, and so you have to learn the Abhidhamma. If you don't learn the Abhidhamma, you are missing out. There's no way you're going to be able to understand the Dhamma if you don't kind of understand all the chittas, all the mind moments, and how they connect together and these kind of things. You're going to be in trouble. And then you go to that Abhidhamma class and you fall asleep because it's so boring. It's just you have to memorize all of these kind of things. So this is the problem. We don't need that, said the Buddha. We don't need these later things. I'm not saying that the Abhidhamma necessarily is wrong. What I'm saying is that sometimes we are uncertain, and at the very least, it is not necessary. Why do things that are not necessary when there are so many beautiful suttas? It's better to read one of those early suttas 10 times than it is to go into the Abhidhamma. Most of us, we don't have time for these kind of things. Maybe if you are a monk and a nun, you do this full time, it can be good to read a little bit of Abhidhamma, just to know what it is, just to know how boring it is, so you can tell people not to read it. Do you study Abhidhamma, Venerable? No, you don't? Okay, wow, you're very, very wise. Okay. So know a little bit, but not too much. So there's nothing missing. The suttas are enough. Yeah. On the other hand, and this is kind of the strange thing, because you might say, well, why am I coming to Hong Kong if the suttas are enough? We can read them on your own. So maybe you should just go back to Australia, where you came from. So I'm contradicting myself a little bit. And so we need, sometimes it's good to have someone who has read these things to do some kind of explanation. And sometimes the Abhidhamma itself can sometimes be an explanation as well. Yeah? Except I don't think it is a very useful one, because it's a bit dry and boring perhaps. But some degree of explanation is important. But at the end of the day, you come back to the suttas, you come back to the word of the Buddha, and that is your mainstay. That is what creates the meaning for you and creates the path forward. So nothing is missing in the suttas, nothing is superfluous, you can't chuck anything out. Yeah, you have to take everything on board. If you throw out rebirth, you haven't got Buddhism anymore, you've got something else. We don't know what that is, but it's not called Buddhism, it's called something else. So don't go to something else, go to Buddhism. What do you believe in? I believe in something else. Doesn't sound as good, right? Doesn't have that same kind of power as Dhamma or the teaching of the Buddha. So the Dhamma is all there. It is svakato, well expounded by the Buddha. It is apparent in the present life. It is immediately effective. All of these things can be understood in this life. Don't have to wait till your next life. So it also means that you can gain the results of the Dhamma right now, in this very moment. If you turn your mind right now in the right way towards the Dhamma, towards something positive, straight away you feel better about yourself. And that is the Dhamma having immediate effect. So it can be experienced in this life, but it also has immediate effect. I will tell you this story. I tell this story on every retreat, but it's a nice little story, and it's from the suttas, of course, because I take most of my stories from the suttas. And it's a nice one because it gives an idea what it means to be immediately effective. And this is the story of the monk Samiti. This is found in the Connected Discourse, the Samyutta Nikaya, sutta number 20 of the Devata Samyutta. And this monk Samiti, he has just had a bath. And in those days they would bathe in the hot springs in India, and he's kind of standing in one robe and kind of drying himself and this kind of thing. And while he's there, this Devata comes, this god, and this probably was a female god, and she comes down to him. It's like the tempter, this is the tempter in Buddhism, or the temptress in Buddhism. And so this god comes down to this young monk, this really young monk, probably very handsome and all those kind of things. And then she says to this young monk, she says, why are you a monk? You are young. You can enjoy sensual pleasures. What are you wasting your time with this Nibbana business? Nibbana is way in the future. Sensual pleasures, you can have them right now. Just disrobe, go into town, have a nice meal, find a nice girlfriend, and enjoy yourself. That's what life is all about. The temptress, coming to kind of check out on this monk. I don't know if this is just a fantasy in his mind or whether there was such a Devata, I don't know. And that's kind of, it's kind of interesting because it sounds right. Nibbana, who knows about Nibbana? Maybe don't know if it's going to happen in this life, deep meditation, maybe sometimes it happens, sometimes not. It's all very uncertain. But sensual pleasures, sure, you just go to lunch and you have sensual pleasures. We know how that works. So it sounds reasonable. Sensual pleasures are available now. This Dhamma business, who knows when it is available? And then this young monk, he was quite wise. And so he replies to this Devata, he says, no, he says, it's the other way around. It's the Dhamma that is available right here and now. Sandittika, this is what we're looking at now, Sandittika, akaliko, yeah, without time, immediate. It is the sensual pleasures that have to do with time. They are the ones that are in the future. You think, what does this mean? Yeah, it's kind of very unclear what this means. Long time ago, it's many years ago now, I was traveling in Indonesia. I go on these tours in Indonesia. These are really exhausting tours. This makes Kadura Center seem like a kind of holiday camp in comparison to the things that are happening in Indonesia. You go to one city every day, you fly between, you have these talk shows in the evening. It's completely crazy what they do over there, but they do it. So we follow along. And so this one place this was in Balikpapan. You know Balikpapan? Yeah, in Kalimantan, in the South Borneo part of Indonesia. Balikpapan means under the plank, apparently, in Indonesian. It's a kind of interesting word. And so we had this talk show in the evening in this hotel, and I told this story. And there was this young man sitting just in front of me on there's usually very large crowds in Indonesia. And so this young man sitting in front. And so I said to this young man, I said, well, who do you believe? Do you believe the Devata? Who is right, do you think? The Devata or the monk? And he said, yeah, the Devata is right. That's what he said straight away, yeah. Sensual pleasure, yeah, you can have them now. Dhamma, who knows about the future? And the whole audience kind of laughed when he said that. It was quite funny at the time. But of course, the monk is right. And why is he right? Well, he's right for this particular reason. The Dhamma is actually immediate. It can be experienced in this life, and if you turn your mind in the right direction right now, if you sit down and you really say from your heart, may all beings be well, straight away, you feel something inside. Yeah, okay, sometimes maybe you're not able to turn your mind because the defilements are just getting in the way, and that's okay. But if you do it in the right way, then the Dhamma is immediately effective. But the sensual pleasures of the world, they are quite different. The Dhamma happiness that you have, you notice when you feel the joy of the Dhamma, the joy of metta, the joy of compassion, it is peaceful. There is no craving there. It is opposed to craving. It is a satisfaction that has nothing to do with desire. But the joys of the world are never really satisfactory. You're always coming with more craving. So you will notice while you're eating your food, you're kind of eating one spoon, and while you're eating that one, you're kind of looking at the next one. Yeah, you can look at the next one, getting that ready to eat the next one. You're not really enjoying the one you're having. Why? Because craving is there together with the enjoyment. It's not really pure enjoyment. It's always about the future, always about going somewhere else, never really being satisfied. And that sensual realm is always like this, always about moving on. There is no real point of satisfaction when you can relax and now everything is okay. Craving always underlies it. Desire always comes together with it. And so that realm, for that reason, is kind of inherently problematic. Yeah, you don't come to that point when your mind says, yeah, get this, then you will be satisfied. Actually, it is never true. It is always a lie. You will never be satisfied in that realm. It is impossible. It is the Dhamma that will satisfy you. And so that monk, Samiti was right. He rejected this Devata. And then when he said this, the Devata says, really? Are you okay? I don't understand what you're saying. So the Devata also was quite wise. Yeah, the Devata thought, okay, maybe I should understand this. And then she says to Samiti, well, please, can you explain? And Samiti says, oh, I'm not sure how to explain this. Let's go to the Buddha and find out. Yeah. So they go to the Buddha, and then they kind of hear the Buddha explaining the kind of similar kind of verse later on. That's the story of Samiti and why the Dhamma is what is truly satisfying at the end of the day, and not all the pleasures of the world that we run after. But you always keep on running because there is no point of satisfaction. And that's why you are like a slave. You're a slave to craving. The world makes you run, makes you move endlessly. There is no resting point. There is no yoga kema that we talked about the other day, the sanctuary where you can rest. That doesn't exist in the world. It's an endlessly being driven on by the slave driver called craving, whipping you over the back and saying, run faster, move faster, work more hours. Don't be satisfied, because it is, if you are satisfied, then you will not be, you will not actually make progress. You have to always have desire and craving. It's good, but actually you are the slave without understanding that you are the slave. Greed is good, right? Actually, that's kind of the most stupid thing that has ever been said in humanity. This was one of these Wall Street investors who said that. They may be good at making money, but they have no idea about happiness. Okay, anyway. So, inviting inspection is the next one. Ehi pasiko. Wow, it's 10 o'clock already, is that true? Okay, at 9, we started half an hour ago, so we have quite a bit of time. Okay, no problems. So we can carry on. Inviting inspection, ehi pasiko, which means like come and see. So come and see for yourself. And it's very similar to the idea of immediately effective and apparent in the present life. Relevant, opanayika, and I don't know if I really like the word relevant here. So another translation is applicable. That is what Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi has been using. Another translation is leading onward. And to me, that is closer to what this really is about. Upanayaka. Nayaka means to lead. Upa means like towards, in a certain direction. So this is the idea of actually something that leads you in a direction of happiness, of nibbana, of all the good things in life. Nayaka is like, they go to the Buddhist countries, and Nayaka, like a Mahanayaka, is like a great leader. So the same word you have here, Naya, to lead, Upa, towards. And this is a kind of an interesting idea, this idea that the Dhamma leads you towards nibbana, leads you towards happiness. And the problem very often when we practice the Dhamma is that instead of allowing the Dhamma to lead us, we are led by all kind of other things. We are led by the sense of self. We are led by defilements. Defilements lead us almost all the time in life. And the sense of self also leads us very often. The conceit, all of these kind of things. And we say, I want to be a good Buddhist. Okay, so you take pride in being a good Buddhist. And so the pride leads you on. Or, I want to be happy, so you have all of this craving for happiness. So the craving kind of leads you on. But what the Dhamma says is that the ideal way in the world is not to be led by conceit, a sense of self, or by defilements or craving. The ideal way of practicing is for the Dhamma to lead you. Let the Dhamma take charge. You become like almost like the slave of the Dhamma, Dhammadasa. If you want a good name, if anyone wants a good Buddhist name, I'll give you a good Buddhist name later on. Dhammadasa, slave of the Dhamma. So just let me know if you want a nice name, and I will give you that one. If that one works for you, I'll give you that name later on. Dhammadasa. So we become like, we just work because the Dhamma works. And that is kind of the idea here. And this is exactly when we talk about doing meditation practice and not doing anything, just allowing meditation to unfold, just sitting back and waiting for the path to work. That is what it's meant by upanayika. You're just sitting there, allowing the Dhamma to take the lead. You don't make the meditation work. The meditation happens to you. You just wait and allow these states to unfold. That is the whole idea of meditation practice. If you try to do it, you are no longer allowing the Dhamma to be in charge. You are allowing yourself, the feeling of me to be in charge. I am going to do it. You can't do it. You are in the way. That's the problem. So get out of the way. Allow the Dhamma to be in charge. Don't allow the defilements to run you. You desire happiness. I have to overcome the suffering. Okay. So the defilements are in charge. No, put all of that aside. The Dhamma should be in charge. And so this is kind of how the meditation is supposed to unfold, by allowing the Dhamma to work through you. And then the path happens. Opanayika, the Dhamma leads. You are just there to be led by the Dhamma. And ideally, our whole practice of Buddhism should be like that. The Dhamma is in charge. So when you go out and you do all of those things in life that you're supposed to do, you are kind, not because you are forcing yourself to be kind, because you are proud of being a good Buddhist and all these kind of things, but you do it because the Dhamma leads you to do what is right. You know that this is important. And you may think this is very high ideal. You may think that it's kind of crazy to talk like this. But actually it is not crazy at all, because we are all doing this to some extent already. To some extent the Dhamma is in charge. If your ego was always in charge and your desires were always in charge, you wouldn't even be here. You'd be doing something completely different. The Dhamma is already having an effect. You're already getting brainwashed. Whether you want to or not, you're already getting brainwashed. Is that good or bad? It's good, right? Because you're going to get brainwashed anyway. So you're allowing the Dhamma to brainwash you in a positive way, and then the path starts to unfold. So the only way to make this work is to have more right view. The more right view you have, the more the Dhamma unfolds naturally. The reason why it doesn't happen is because we don't have right view all the time, or right view is only partial. This is why the stream mentor must become fully enlightened within 7 lifetimes, because the Dhamma is solid, the right view is solid, and they have no choice but to follow that Dhamma. The Dhamma unfolds within them, and so it must happen within 7 lifetimes. This is why that right view basically takes you to Nibbana whether you want to or not. And so that is what happens here. So if you want the Dhamma to work more through you, reflect on these teachings. Read the suttas. Try to understand what the Buddha is talking about. And the more you understand that, the more the Dhamma just happens within you. In reality, it is more complex. In reality, sometimes your sense of self will be in charge. Sometimes the defilements will be in charge. Sometimes the Dhamma will be in charge, Because this is the reality of human minds. We cannot, unless we are a noble person, we cannot make the Dhamma work all the time. There's going to be a mixture of worldly things and then the highest ideal. So our job is really to move more towards the Upanayika, the Dhamma leading us on, and not just the sense of self leading us on. So we move gradually more towards that, and allow the path to unfold through us instead. So that is the idea of Upanayika. It's quite nice. Allowing the Dhamma to unfold. So then what? So then the last one is that sensible or wise people can know it for themselves. So these are the Vinyu. Vinyu means like wise. So the Dhamma is only possible for wise people. So you have to be reasonably sensible. If you have no sense, then it's not going to happen. Some people are never going to be interested in the Dhamma. And if you try to tell them about the Dhamma, they say, go away, don't want to hear it. And that's they lost, right? And so that's why we should never be too concerned about converting other people or getting other people to see. We should never, people often ask the question, oh, how can I get my family members to become more interested in Buddhism? The short answer, you can't. That's the short answer. Sometimes you can, depending on your family members. Sometimes they are open, but in general, people are what they are, and we cannot force anyone. Either the seeds are there, and they are ready to sprout, and they can learn the Dhamma, or they are not. And just because they are our family members doesn't make them special necessarily, They have their own background, their own defilements, their own life, and so you cannot guarantee that this will happen just because they happen to be your family members. So if your husband and wife not interested in Dhamma, it's because you chose the wrong husband and wife. That's the reason. Something like that. So, anyway, you know what I mean. All right, so there you are. So we had to be as wise as possible. So we try to understand. We try to be wise. Wisdom is the most beautiful quality in a human being, because that is what makes us able to have the best possible lives. That's what wisdom does. And then once you have all of these things, then this beautiful sequence we were talking about yesterday, then it kicks in again. So I'll just read it out because I read it yesterday. So when a noble disciple recollects the Dhamma, the mind is not full of greed or of desire, ill will and confusion. At that time, their mind is straight, based on the Dhamma. A noble disciple whose mind is straight finds inspiration in the meaning and the teaching. You understand. You think, wow, this is true. You understand the meaning, what these teachings are pointing to. Yeah, you gain that faith. Think, wow, this is true, for goodness sake. I have to act like this. And because of that, you find joy connected with the teachings. And then, when your joy comes, and this whole sequence starts to work by itself. It's dhammata. It is in accordance with nature. You can't make it work. So when you are joyful, rapture, piti, arises. When the mind is full of rapture, the piti is there, the body becomes tranquil, passaddhi. When the body is tranquil, you feel bliss, sukha. And when you feel bliss, the mind becomes stilled. Yeah, you achieve samadhi. Immersed, that is one of the translations of Bhante Sujato. I must admit, I don't quite agree with him on this one. Immersed, immersion, to me, it's a funny word, but he likes it, so that's why he uses it. This is called, again, a noble disciple who lives in balance among people who are unbalanced, who lives untroubled among people who are troubled. They have entered the stream of the teaching, and they develop the recollection of the teaching. So that is the idea of recalling the Dhamma and how that can lead you in the right way. Yeah, so feeling a sense of blessing in your life, counting your blessings, that these teachings are still available to us. After 2,500 years, yes, teachings are still there. It's kind of extraordinary. How much longer will they last? Probably not much longer. Now is your chance to practice these teachings. Next time you come back to the human realm, that might be it, finished. No longer there, and you have to make do with some sort of inferior teaching instead. Who knows what's going to happen to you? Now is the chance. Okay, let's have a 10-minute break.